Cricket.
Hello and welcome to episode 4 of The Greatest Ashes. This is Locked Out, about the third test match at Old Trafford, which of course ended in a nerve-wracking draw. I'm Simon Hughes.
And I'm Simon Mann.
And we'll recap the great moments of that game. And by the way, you can also watch this on YouTube. If you Google the Analyst podcast, you can watch some of those great moments back and watch us in conversation as well. And also, don't forget the Analyst podcasts that we do regularly on England cricket, on domestic cricket, and on any other cricketing topics twice a week, the Analyst Inside Cricket. In this particular episode, I suppose the remarkable thing about this test match, Old Trafford, only 3 days after that epic win by England by 2 runs at Edgbaston, is that the man who tripped on a ball just before the game, Glenn McGrath, who ruptured ankle ligaments, was back. Amazing.
Astonishing. I thought he was out of the series. There was no way that he would get back for the next test match. So what was, so that you said there were 3 days between the two games and he did it on the first day. So basically after 5 plus 3, 8, I can do the math, after about 8 days, he was fit again to play, or at least he was past fit to play, as we'll find out. He didn't have the greatest game. He did take wickets, but he didn't have the greatest game that he's ever had in Test cricket. So just a reminder where we are in the series. England need to win the series to regain the Ashes. It's 1-1. England lost at Lord's. They were hammered at Lord's despite an incredible first day where they really competed hard. At Edgbaston, absolute nail-biter that went down to the wire on the 4th morning, England winning by 2 runs. So on to Old Trafford, and tremendous excitement about the series now. Edgbaston just captured everyone's imagination. But the point about the series in general, and we'll discover in our next episode and our final episode, the Oval as well, it was unrelenting, wasn't it? The interest, excitement, the cricket, it was unrelenting in its drama and its excitement.
And that, as a result, captured the nation. Because it was on terrestrial TV and because it ebbed and flowed and the narrative was all over the papers as well, everyone was hooked on it, and it became a daily conversation. Cricket was very much in the national consciousness, and everybody was talking about the remarkable story of McGrath 8 days after going down in a heap, and we thought he'd turn up to Old Trafford with a Zimmer frame because he could barely walk, and he's in the starting 11, and he explains here how he managed to recover so quickly.
Yeah, so like I said before, 6 to 8 week injury normally, fully ruptured 2 ligaments, but I started physio straight away, icing every sort of 20 minutes on and off, and Errol was our physio, Errol Alcott, who was just incredible. So I was having physio 24/7. 2 days before that game, I was still struggling to walk. The day before, we went to Manchester United and had a bit of a sort of training session there, and yeah, that was an incredible facility, and being around those sort of players. I got to meet Ryan Giggs and swap shirts with him, and so that was an incredible experience. But I was just starting to run, and then the morning of the test I could run in and bowl, and so I was in the team.
So in a way, McGrath underlining the fact that Australian cricketers are like cockroaches. You can't crush them. You can't destroy them. They keep coming back. They keep coming up alive again. And McGrath took his place in the team, but actually didn't, as you said, have as much impact as he was hoping.
No, I think Glenn McGrath would have had a really decisive, possibly, impact on the series. Might have won the Test match at Edgbaston. Probably would have done. He was a fantastic bowler, but that was one of those moments in treading on the ball at Edgbaston that just helped England. That kind of tipped it towards them and gave them the potential to win the series. Didn't guarantee anything either way. Actually, we just don't know. We'll never know. But he was such a good bowler that it would have obviously been much harder for England to make decent progress in the series if he'd been 100% fit.
Now, one person who hadn't had that much influence on the series, certainly with the bat, so far, was Michael Vaughan, the England captain. It's so important for a captain to have the respect of his team by performing as much as it is by decision-making. And Vaughan hadn't really made runs, the kind of runs he was capable of. And so, he came into this test match thinking, I need to make a proper contribution here. And it was interesting how influenced he was by the mascot when he went out to toss.
I've been scoring no runs and I just wanted to contribute. I'm the captain. I'm making some half-decent decisions, but you've got to contribute with your skill, and that's obviously batting for me. And I remember this young mascot Connor, and he came out to toss, and I had my blazer on and my England hat, and I had the team sheet, and he walked towards me and he shook me hand. He said, "You're not smiling." And I looked at him, and he's got wires coming out of his nose going down. He'd got some pack with him as well. He'd gone through a couple of operations. And I remember thinking, you know what, you are right. You're absolutely right. Here I am, I'm captain in England, I'm playing cricket for a living, and you are a young chap who's going through a huge amount of distress, and you're having to say to me, "Oh, you look miserable. Smile." And he's smiling, he's got the biggest smile on his face, his mum and dad are there, and I just thought, you know what, I'm going to try and enjoy this game.
Well, Michael won the toss, and he was not going to make the mistake that Ricky Ponting made at Edgbaston, if you want to see it as a mistake. Look, he put England in, they scored 400, they lost the game. So in retrospect, you could say, if they'd batted, it might have been a very different outcome. Okay, Michael batted first, and England, once again, scored freely. They scored at 3.91 runs per over. They scored 400 plus again, and Michael made 166.
And it was like the kind of batting he had produced in Australia 3 or 4 years before on tour there, which perhaps first put a marker down for what a fantastic player he was. He made a couple of big 190s in that 2002-2003 Ashes series. That had given him the confidence to know how to play against these Aussies, how to take them on, to be positive in your approach and fearless. And he certainly was. He had that off drive as well, didn't he, Michael Vaughan? When you wanted to identify, the classic, the most beautiful off drives in the game, he would certainly be the owner of one.
Magnificent stroke from the England captain.
Michael Vaughan is at his best. Maximum.
That was a cruncher. He didn't have any extravagant foot movement there for the stroke, but gosh, it came right off the... This was Australia a couple of years ago when he played that stroke in such magnificent fashion against all the Australian pace bowlers.
Now that is extra special. You don't have to be good to do that. You have to be special.
I know it's 2 runs less than the 6, but I think I like that more. A wonderful shot.
What's that done? Now then, yes, out! 600 Test match wickets for Shane Warne. What a moment.
The whole ground is standing, but I fancy it's not so much for Marcus Trescothick, but for Shane Warne. 600th wicket has come off slightly unorthodox fashion, off the back of Trescothick's bat, onto Adam Gilchrist's knee and up into his gloves. And the end of Marcus Trescothick, and what a moment for the great leg spinner.
Oh, it's a full toss, and he's hit it nicely. McGrath might not make this. He's struggling to get there, and he won't be running around there and putting his foot down just short of the rope, just in case he goes over on that ankle again. Right, that takes him to 99. He's got it away. That's well played. Listen to the roar. It goes up. That's Michael Vaughan's 15th century, and he's 4th against Australia.
And Freddie Flintoff helped him at the other end. So Freddie himself had been sort of slogging a bit at Edgbaston, having made no runs at all at Lord's. But here, he played a slightly more cultured innings.
And your innings, that first innings as well, was quite a seemed quite a mature innings, I thought.
I felt like I was batting again. From Edgbaston hitting, and then second innings just calming down a little bit. I felt at Old Trafford I played an innings, albeit of only 40 odd, but there's a few little things clicked whilst I was out in the middle. My foot movement before the bowler bowled it seemed to be back to what it used to be. I was getting out the way of the bouncers as well. I was seeing the ball really well, and I think that set me up for the rest of the series, to be honest, because after that innings, it'd been nice to have got a few more. I got caught mid-on. I felt like I was a batsman again.
So a really good first day for England, 341 for 5. And that's kind of like in the bank, isn't it? I mean, that's a pretty good first day in a crucial test match, series level at 1-1, 341 for 5, taking advantage of a good pitch. England eventually went on to score 444. Then Australia's turn to bat.
And just before we get to Australia's batting, I mean, I suppose it was important, that innings, because Old Trafford was the place where Shane Warne produced the ball of the century. And in a way, he's always had that aura at Old Trafford because the ball spins and bounces there. So this performance, 444, even though Warne took wickets, it exercised the memory of that ball of the century to Mike Gatting in 1993. So it was an important message, statement by England to make those runs.
Yeah, I mean, one of the themes of the series was that Shane Warne took wickets. I mean, he took a whole stack full of wickets. He took 40 wickets in the series, which is just phenomenal at his age
and to be
as well.
On the losing side.
And to be on the losing side. But actually, it's his runs per over that were interesting because England attacked him and they had some success. So although he took 4 wickets, he took 4 for 99. England progressed to 444 all out. So Australia's turn on the second day, and England, as they'd done at Edgbaston, they chipped away, they got to work. And Simon Jones to the fore, he took 6 wickets, and Australia at the end of the second day were 214 for 7. So they were well behind. They were 230 runs behind with only 3 wickets in hand and 3 days to play in the test match. Again, it felt like what an opportunity for England. Like at Edgbaston where they'd taken that 99-run first innings lead. What an opportunity. Bags of time left in the game, totally in control of the match. Jones, excellent. And, well, as we'll come to see in the second innings as well, reverse swing.
Yeah, I mean, reverse swing was very important. And actually, Jones gives a lot of credit to Troy Cooley, who was England's bowling coach, Australian, of course, who helped England develop their reverse swing skills. And, I've got an old ball here, actually. And the key to reverse swing, as Jones explains, is to get one side very dry, to keep one side absolutely scrupulously dry and polished, and let the other side get scuffed up. And at Old Trafford, which is a very abrasive pitch, these scuff marks will get bigger and bigger over time, and it'll get really quite ragged, one side of the ball. And that enables them, when they keep the other side very dry and shiny, that enables the ball to reverse swing quite significantly, swinging in opposite direction to conventional swing. I had a field day actually explaining this to the viewers, sort of drawing on the ball and showing how it was swinging and putting arrows on the pictures to show which side was the shiny side and which side was the rough side and which way it was swinging and so on. And one time when I was using the telestrator in the truck, which is the pen to draw on the screen, the pen got stuck. And suddenly all this drawing appeared all over the screen, like a kid scribbling on the screen. And I had to hand back to the great Richie Benno at the end of a fairly flawed piece of analysis to say, sorry about this mess. And Richie was brilliant, actually. And he just said, Simon, that was a very interesting piece of analysis. And don't worry, Picasso used to struggle on Sundays.
There are more compliments from Richie. So,
amazing.
Like Picasso.
But the man who really exploited it was Jones, who had that express pace and that slingy sort of action. He didn't require any looseners as well. You didn't see him bowling sort of 2 or 3 looseners. He was right on it from ball 1. And he was getting the ball to swing both ways in the air. And he says, after taking those 6 wickets, these are his favourites.
Ponting, straight after tee, was the first ball after tee. He came forward to just a back of a length ball, and it just bounced a little bit more and barely caught him a point. He was a huge wicket for us. I think out of their lineup, he was the danger man for us because he was so gritty. He was so. Your margin for error against Ponting was nothing. If you were in length, he'd either pull you or he'd drive you.
That's a good example of Ponting playing his natural game.
It's probably like a couple of handkerchiefs in length, and if you didn't hit them properly and hard and as quickly as you could, he's going to take you down. Gilchrist, look, he was unreal. To have him coming in at number 7, you get them 5 or 6 down, and then he walks in. He was relentless. You're thinking, when is this going to stop? And then after him came Shane Warne. They're a real strong batting lineup.
Good catch. Very, very good catch from Trescothick, and 5 for Simon Jones. Once again, working wonders with this old ball, and good delivery to get rid of Brett Lee, helped enormously by Trescothick's agility at first slip.
So Jones excellent, and England in a really strong position, as we outlined after 2 days of the match. But this is where their 2 twin foes began to oppose them. One of those foes, Shane Warne. Shane Warne with the ball we've talked about. This time it was Shane Warne with the bat, taking it on and scoring freely. The other foe was the Manchester rain, because the third day's play was delayed until 3 o'clock. So, I mean, you can just imagine how frustrating that must have been for the players and the England supporters and spectators as well, who had their tickets for the Saturday of the match, turn up with England in such a strong position in the game, thinking, right, this could be a lead of 200, whatever, and England then can march on and set Australia a huge score in the fourth innings and win the game. But the rain came, a lot of play was lost, and Shane Warne, he significantly reduced the deficit because he made 90. I mean, he's incredible cricketer, isn't he?
Yeah,
I mean,
and he was able to make runs, even though he didn't have the best technique actually, but he had a great eye and he had this incredible self-belief as well. And he just managed to hit balls into strange places and back himself and take on the bowlers. And he was dropped actually by Geraint Jones behind the stumps at one point in one of those periods of play between rain breaks. And I think England was sort of seeing that opportunity of a big lead slipping away until they finally got worn out.
Yeah, it wasn't just that they were seeing the opportunity for a big lead slip away. That was certainly true, but also time was running out. So they were racing against time. So when they finally bowled Australia out with a lead of 142, which is a significant advantage on the Sunday, they then had to score quickly, and it was about that. How many runs could they score in what sort of time? What could they set Australia? And how much time would they have to bowl Australia out in their second innings? And as we'll see, the answer was not quite enough time.
Andrew Strauss did his best, making 100, and at last imprinting his authority on the series. And of course, he had this moniker Darryl in Shane Warne's mind. I think possibly.
Just explain that, Yoz, for those who haven't listened to our episodes before.
So Warne was calling him Darryl after Darryl Cullinan, who was his favourite bunny. He used to get him out regularly, the South African batsman. So he called Strauss Darryl through most of the series. But I think by this time, he started calling him Andrew instead, because he'd actually proved his ability with the bat and given England, a decent lead.
Yeah, it certainly was a decent lead. And Shane Warne actually didn't take a wicket in the England second innings.
And that was a very important innings for me. I hadn't got runs in the first innings. I got hit by Brett Lee hard on the helmet, and then he bowled me with a great slow ball in the first innings. But Michael Vaughan played exceptionally well, in particular Trez played well. And so we were in the ascendancy, and that second innings was a bit of a shot to nothing. We had to go out and score runs quickly, and Australia had to spread the field. So it was one of those environments where it was a bit easier mentally. And I had a license to play with freedom. And, to get that monkey off my back was hugely important. I mean, there were a number of very good English cricketers, who never got 100 against Australia. So to get, I remember, Warnie coming up to me and congratulating me, and having a beer in the dressing room after the game. And I just felt like like to someone like him, and that he was very sort of symbol of Australian cricket. In Australian cricket, they don't rate you until you play well. And so it's very simple. If you play well, they'll nod their heads and go, well done.
So Australia was set 423 to win the Test match. Unlikely, not impossible for that Australian side on a still very good surface, but unlikely. They were 24 for no wicket with 1 day to go. They started the final day, 24 for no wicket. They'd seen out 10 overs the night before. But I mean, this is the day, I think, I mean, there were lots of days in the series that people remember, but this was one of them, wasn't it? For many reasons, not least because so many people wanted to see it. I mean, there was Ashes fervour going on by now. Everyone wanted a piece of the Ashes. Everyone wanted to see this dramatic final day play out. You thought 10 Australian wickets on the final day, that might be quite hard for England to achieve. They did have 98 overs in which to take them, but even so, the pitch was still good, and England had a lot in their armoury, but everyone wanted a piece of this. So what it meant was the tickets for the final day were £10 and £5, because in final day of a match, not so many people turned up, and they didn't sell them a huge number in advance. So everyone thought, right, £10, £5, what a bargain! I mean, we got an eye for a bargain, haven't we? Let's get along to Old Trafford. The only problem is about 45,000 people turned up, and the ground only holds around about 23,000. So they had a problem. And you had a problem as well, didn't you?
Well, it was amazing, isn't it? You said Ashes fervour. I mean, it really was, because the crowds getting to the ground were right across the street. They were queuing down the road, outside the ground, and right down the road.
And what sort of time were we talking about here?
We were trying to get there about 8:15, 8:30. I was in a car with Tony Greig, the great commentator and former England all-rounder. And in the end, we couldn't get to the car park even close. The policeman said, no, it's a no entry sign. It's just pedestrians only. No cars allowed through here. And Tony Greig was, well, but you've got to get to this telecast. We've got to get to the telecast.
Is he the only person in the world that calls it a telecast?
I think he probably is. But anyway, the policeman was having none of it. So no, you can't. You've got to walk. So we had him and his titfer. He had to walk all round the houses to get in. And that didn't affect just the commentators, even the players, and even the local player, Freddie Flintoff. Even he couldn't get into the ground.
I stayed at home throughout the Old Trafford Test match, one of the times you get a chance to sleep in your own bed, so I made the most of it. But that last morning, it's probably about a 25-minute trip for me to get from Knutsford to Old Trafford. It took me an hour and 20. Just come off the motorway, and just people walking down the streets, and the cars and the traffic was just unbelievable. I ended up coming down Talbot Road, and I knew it was closed one way. So I was running late, so I went down the wrong side and then got right roasting off the copper at the end, just outside the gates. And I tried to explain, look, I need to get in this ground to warm up. And he gave me some big story about everybody's just as important, and I'm very humble. Says, you want to give me a ticket or what? I just need to get out of my car and into the ground. And once in there, the scenes were unbelievable. At 9 o'clock in the morning, the ground was packed. 15,000 turned outside the ground, people at Piccadilly Station getting turned away, telling not to bother. And for cricket, I've never experienced that at Old Trafford. Like for the 4-day games, we try and lock them in.
There are all sorts of estimates about how many people were turned away. Some say 10,000, some say 20,000. Let's say it was 200,000, shall we?
And Jim Coombs, the former chief executive of Lancashire, former player, he said people would start queuing at 2 a.m. to get in. Incredible.
Yeah.
So Bobby managed to get in. May have had to pay his £10, but they eventually let him in.
Because everyone wanted to see this final day. The chance for either side to go 2-1 up. England looked in a much better position because they had 420 runs in the bank. So it's just a question of really whether England could take those 10 wickets on the final day.
Magical stuff from Flintoff, and what carry through to Geraint Jones. Got in! Oh, Flintoff has produced a blinding little spell here. Over the wicket, round the wicket, off stump, and now leg stump. That's terrific cricket.
Was right in the headlights out there and never looked like getting out of them.
And?
Well, there is one moment, I think, in that Test match, which in a way almost encapsulates the whole series. It was a Simon Jones dismissal of Michael Clarke. two of the lesser known names perhaps in the teams, not the not the big heroes that you'd necessarily identify, but it was the most wonderful piece of cricket, which actually not only visually was tremendous, but also the sound of the ball hitting the stump was also magnificent. So let's watch it and listen to it in full.
That is very good. The swing works, the Oracle again.
In isolation, it was dramatic enough, but Jones explains the process behind that dismissal.
So the ball is reversing nicely as it would at Old Trafford, because the square is so abrasive, even though we'd had a lot of rain. So I just thought, right, he's going to have 10 balls of a reverse away swing. I'm just going to try and get him comfortable. And that's the thing when you get to test level. You can't just bowl people out. You have to think them out because they're that good. So I thought, right, this is my plan now. I'll let Vaughan know. Right, I'm going away from him for 10 balls, 10 to 12 balls. But then you get that feeling that, right, the time is now. I think he's happy doing what he's doing. He's happy just leaving. This is easy. He edged a couple down to third man. I'm happy with that. So then I got to top my mark, and the crowd had gone a little bit quiet. So I give them the G up, and they all reacted. And then you can hear the crowd woo as you're running in. And genuinely, that ball couldn't have come out any better if I tried. It just came out of my hand beautifully. But I knew as soon as I'd done it, that's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. It's bang on the money. And then he shouldered arms. I heard him say, "Oh no." I don't think the stump bag picked it up. He kind of muttered it. And then just heard that noise.
This one has come back sharply. Well outside off stump there, but not there. That's some piece of bowling, I can tell you.
I've turned around and celebrated. All the boys are piling me. But I remember when I looked at the crowd, I'd spotted an older couple in the crowd. And all I could see was them hugging and embracing each other. And it was almost like, oh, we've been part of this kind of what's just happened. Oh, it blew my mind how, honestly, I thought my head was going to burst. It was probably the best feeling I had in any test match or any cricket game I'd ever played. In that one moment was
better than sex. That is actually.
Yeah, it would have. Yeah.
When you have that planning like that, and you've actually sort of set the plan out and it's worked perfectly. Which how often does that actually happen? It doesn't very often. Does it?
Never. No, that happens in your dreams. Doesn't it? That does happen in your dreams. But it was reality that day, and it was just, the best.
So what Jones was doing there was manipulating the ball to make it move away from the batter and get him into a sort of habit of leaving it, and then just switching the ball round, the shiny side round, and without any change of action, bringing one back the other way into the stumps. Clark, thinking it was still the outswinger, left it alone, and the result you can hear for yourself.
That is very good.
Yeah, fabulous piece of bowling from a bowler who was right on the top of his game. He was such a crucial member of that England side in 2005. A few other things that I recall from that final day. Damien Martin, given out LBW, nicked it onto his pad. And that leads us on to the whole debate about DRS, that because your cameras were so good by then, because you were showing things in real close up, player walks off. Everybody who's watching on TV, all the commentators, and probably all the players as well, know it's not out. But of course, it is out because the umpires raised the finger and there's no decision review system. That's how it was. But the problem was, of course, is that as time went on, as the cameras became better and better, and you talked about super slow-mo in a previous episode, you can just see it. So it just felt wrong, and it created that, not necessarily that incident in particular, but those type of incidents created that groundswell to actually look, come on, let's get these decisions right in the future.
Yeah. It was 3 or 4 years before we used any sort of TV aids to assist decisions, and I think we were all clamouring for it by then, really, and the players were certainly doing so. I mean, umpires were less convinced. Peter Willey, one of the former umpires, father of David Willey, would often say to me, well, what are we supposed to do then? We'll just be standing up there counting to 6. And I'd say, well, sometimes you even get that wrong because they'd add one extra ball to an over or whatever. So I think it was an inevitability. I know some people are anti-DRS, many people are anti-VAR, but I think it's inevitable when you have that standard of cameras and that amount of technology. You have to remember Hawkeye was still only used then as a TV tool for the viewer. You didn't give it to the players. The umpires didn't get it. They could watch it in the highlights after the game, but they didn't get it automatically fed to them or anything. So we were still in the early days of a potential decision review system, but the clamour for it was getting louder. Yeah.
The other thing that we should recall and celebrate from that final day as well was one of the great test innings by Ricky Ponting. So Michael Vaughan had made 166 in the first innings. Ricky Ponting came up with 156 in the second.
Wasn't a bad shot. With the ball wasn't terribly short. And Ponting got himself in a very, very good position. I like that. If anything, that was an even better shot. It was played in more relaxed fashion.
And actually, while he was there was just a hint, only a hint, it was no more than that Australia might chase down the score as well, might chase down the 423 they needed for victory. I suppose the only thing about that is if they thought they could win, it might have given England a better chance of winning because they would have to open up a bit. But Ponting kept Australia in the game, so he was holding an end up as well as scoring quite freely because he scored 156 runs in the day. He wasn't there at the start of the day's play, so he was scoring freely and resisting at the same time. So he was doing a dual role really on that final day. But England dismissed him with 4 overs of the match left, and he was the 9th wicket.
There's a little appeal. He's given it out! Out! Ricky Ponting is out! It's impossible to know what to say.
So we've got a situation now, Australia 9 down with 4 overs of the test match left. I mean, we're almost back into Edgbaston territory, aren't we, where the game is right on that knife edge.
And Ponting thought that they'd lost. He thought that was the Ashes, actually. He treasures that innings as one of his greatest, and he batted virtually the whole day. And he played a wonderful innings. I mean, he scored runs as well as being defiant. And I can remember the image of him when he was given out, caught off the glove down the leg side, and he just stood there as if he couldn't believe it, as if it wasn't happening, and someone would have to winch him off, and he'd literally had to be dragged off because not only did he think that his innings was over, but that was the series over.
But it was not, because there was still Glenn McGrath, England's tormentor in chief for so many years before and afterwards with the ball. He was not a batter of any renown. But I suppose when you've got a goal, as a tail ender yourself, as an incompetent tail ender yourself, if you've got a goal, it's a bit different, isn't it? You've got to survive, 3-4 hours or whatever. But when you've got a small goal, you set your mind to it.
I think that's a really good point, because as a tail ender, you don't have the psychological approach to batting, the mindset to play a long innings, and that's why you often get out, because you lose concentration quite quickly. But as you say, if you have the target of 4 overs, or remember that incredible last wicket stand between Monty Panesar and Jimmy Anderson at the Australia a few years later, where they held out for a draw, 59 balls or something. If you have that focus, then you can apply yourself. And McGrath did that. He could not bat at all. He was almost worse than a tail ender. But he had a bat, and he just managed to get it in the way of the ball. And crucially, he got off strike in that last over. Steve Harmison was entrusted with the final over to try and get the last wicket. I remember up on the screen, England need 1 wicket to win, and all the crowd were absolutely behind Harmison. But actually on the 2nd or 3rd ball of that final over, he bowled a full toss, and McGrath managed to nudge it into a space and got off strike. And he he has a clear memory of that moment.
Draw with me batting, which is a minor miracle, and then going to that 5th test, it's everything's still on the wire, even on the line, even down to that last day. We thought was still a chance to win. So, the first 2 or 3, and I remember just getting enough bat on one out to mid-on where there was no fieldsman, and I just run, and I just knew, okay, I'm done. This test for me is over. I can just wait at the non-strikers. Then it was a feeling of relief.
I have to say, watching it, I never thought that England were going to take that final wicket. I just had that feeling. They actually negotiated those 4 overs with a degree of comfort. Okay, say, well, it's only 24 balls, but I mean, imagine the tension out there for the batters as well, because you probably feel the series is on the line. If Australia had lost that, then it'd been pretty difficult for them. England were on top. They just won at Edgbaston, they just won at Old Trafford. The crowd were right behind them. The country were right behind them. So there's a lot on those last 4 overs.
That is how fine this thing is. Minute. Nothing. Well, that's a waste. To his ball down leg side. One ball remains. You must make him play to give yourself a chance. Here we are. Brett Lee has done it.
Australia managing to steer themselves towards a draw, which they celebrated, Yoz. Something that Michael Vaughan picked up.
You're always disappointed because you want to win, but that I would say in my time being the England captain, I thought that was our best performance. From the minute that we arrived on the Thursday to dominating pretty much every session, barring probably one session on the Saturday, was a bit of rain and Warney got hold of us with the bat. I think he whacked us for 90 odd. Apart from that, I felt we dominated every session. We batted with great intensity. We almost did to Australia what they'd done to us for many, many years.
Redemption from Edgbaston. An amazing performance by Australia to bat through the day.
To see the Aussies celebrating a draw, for me, was great. I'd never seen that. They, I'm sure in the 90s, early 2000s, would have taken the mick out of us jumping all over each other, celebrating draws in Pakistan and Sri Lanka. That wasn't the Aussie way. So to see Langer, Buchanan, the coach, Matty Hayden celebrating a draw was great for me, because I just thought, wait, we've come so far. We've come so far in the space of just a couple of games. We were 1-0 down just a few days ago. Now we're 1-1 and we've just pushed them all the way.
It's funny, actually. I've thought about this quite a lot over the years, this idea of Australia celebrating a draw. Michael saying, look at them, they're celebrating a draw. This is a team that, used to smack us every time we played against them. They'd hammer us every time they played. They're up there celebrating a draw. I think their reaction was totally understandable, because they'd been in a huge contest against England, and they'd survived brilliantly on that final day, hadn't they? Okay, it was 9 down, but everyone was against them, weren't they? The crowd was against them. There was this massive groundswell. England had this excellent bowling attack. Simon Jones with his reverse swing. We talked about that wicket. It was actually quite a significant achievement for Australia to survive against that good England team. And Ponting had played a magnificent innings as well. So I could understand Michael's psychology to his team. Look, they're celebrating a draw, but I would have been celebrating a draw if that had been me as well. Look, Jimmy Anderson and Monty Panesar, England celebrated a draw in Cardiff, didn't they? And that helped them win the Ashes. So this, it's all part of it's kind of like small battle, or one of the battles in the war, isn't it? The ultimate goal is to, not that I want to get necessarily into, military allusions, but, the whole point is to win in the end, isn't it? So however you get there, you just take each step that you possibly can. And this was a step for Australia towards regaining the Ashes, or to at least retaining the Ashes.
I suppose that's the beauty of a 5-test series, in that these narratives, can influence the next test match, and there's an emotional momentum in the series. And also, it's the beauty of the Ashes themselves, in that you have to win the series to regain the Ashes. And so England had to win, whereas Australia only had to draw the series to retain the Ashes. So, you can see, I agree, you can see why they would have celebrated Australia, but you can also see why England and Michael Vaughan were quite buoyed by it as well.
But surely England must have been deflated a bit, though, don't you think? I mean, they played magnificently in that match, and they'd outplayed Australia, but they must have been deflated at the same time, despite Michael's words. I mean, I haven't actually talked to him about it, really. What did you really feel? But there must have been a huge sense of disappointment in the England camp as well.
Effort, yeah, I suppose so, which is why Vaughan played on that image of Australia celebrating to keep England's aspirations and optimism high. I'll just read a quick passage from my diary of the aftermath of that match. Journeying back from the match with Michael Atherton, who was commentating, we encountered two families at an M6 service station who had also attended it. One had driven up in the early hours from the Sussex coast just to see the final day, the other from some remote part of Essex. They had been among the 40,000 who'd queued up from before dawn to get tickets. Many, we noticed, had been in the 18 to 30 age group, people who, we're assured by the marketeers, are only interested in football, electronic gimmicks and reality TV. That they, and the 7 million plus viewers who tuned into the play on Channel 4, were attracted by an event which lasts for hours, doesn't feature loud music, cheerleaders, gaudy coloured strips, or groping in a jacuzzi, as was going on in Big Brother, which was on Channel 4 straight after the cricket. It was an interesting development in our instant gratification era.
So you felt something a bit different was going on. But I'm not surprised as well, because the sport was absolutely gripping. You'd had 3 tremendous test matches that each one had something unique about it, and on it went as well.
And it was the beauty of instant live sport, that its unpredictability, which you can't replicate really in any other medium, which is why, the big channels pay the big bucks for it.
But the bottom line is this. After 5 days of going at each other hammer and tongs, the match ended in a draw. And the series was still level at 1-1 with 2 to play. Then the teams moved on to Nottingham. And it was getting tight now, because there are only 2 to play for the Ashes to be decided.
So England were locked out at Old Trafford. In our next episode in this series, England prized the door ajar at Trent Bridge. And don't forget, by the way, to also listen to our regular Analyst Inside Cricket podcasts.
A ball in, great delivery, wonderful bowling, the stumps are down, Brett Lee has made the breakthrough, he's got the man out that really could win this quickly, 18 to win, and now we're into the tail.
Can you believe it? What a delivery